Hi, I'm Mr. Ferranti, and welcome. In this video, we're going to show you how to create a data table from scratch using Google Sheets. This data table will be used to gather data from our LVMS Live weather station that's located right up on top of our roof here at LVMS. Okay, so to get started, what I would suggest you do is go to Google Classroom and open up your data table template that I provided for you. And also, you're going to want to open up the Analyzing Weather Data website that I've also provided you a link to in Google Classroom. Right, in a few short seconds, I'll be live in your screen, and I will be showing you how to use Google Sheets to create that data table. All right, let's get started. You can see on the website, if I scroll down, you've probably already read the background phenomena and watch the introduction to weather data video. And here we are in the procedures. Procedures are very important to follow. Oftentimes when students are having difficulty with projects and assignments, it's often because they are not reading and following the procedures or instructions. So please pay specific attention to those things. You'll notice that some of the things that are mentioned here you may have already done, opening up your Google Sheets data table from Google Classroom. Okay, we're not going to start with a blank one from scratch. You're going to go right to Google Classroom to open up your template. Okay, this way when you turn it in, it's a little bit easier for you to turn it in, and it already has your name assigned to it. Okay, you're also going to open up your timesheet for this unit so that you can track your progress on this assignment. And then you can follow the instructional videos below, which you are already doing clearly if you're watching this video. Okay. You're going to notice that, we talked a little bit about, or I mentioned a little bit about variety of weather factors, such as current temperature, relative humidity, rain, barometer, the barometer trend, which is called bar trend, and cloud cover. Okay. And then this information, eventually you're going to get this right out of this website. I'm going to have a link to our weather station data that you'll find in the website. Okay, so we'll show you that in another video. Today, we're just going to make the data table that will reflect all the information in here. In addition to these weather factors, we're also going to need the date and the time that you're recording your data. All right, so let's hop over to Google Sheets. Okay, and you can see we talked in the overview video about cells, columns, and rows a little bit, and we're going to get into that information now. Okay, so fairly simple thing to do is to just start by typing in the information that's required to be in your data table. So we need a header row, and the header row is going to, we're going to actually start the header row in row 3. Okay, so we're going to click in cell A3, and the first piece of information we need is the date. And so you can just type the word date in there. You can also type the word time. Okay, then we're going to need the word current temperature. Okay, and here's an instance where the column is not wide enough to fit the text within the cell. All right, and instead of shrinking the size of the text, as a matter of fact, we're going to wind up increasing the text in a little bit. We can spread the row and make it wider. I'm sorry, make the column wider, not the row. All right, so a quick thing to do then is, if you recall, I may have mentioned in a video, this box right up here, okay, so it's where the column and the row titles meet. There's a blank cell. It's not even a cell, it's a button basically. If you click that button, it will apply the change that we're going to make here, this formatting change. It'll apply it to the entire sheet. So we're going to click that, and here's where we're going to adjust our font size. And we're going to make the font size 12, a little bit larger, okay, a little bit easier to read. Okay, now we can start stretching our columns a little wider. So the way you do that is you hover your cursor in between row C, column C and column D, and right on the line there, you'll notice that my cursor changes from an arrow to a double arrow, left to right. And that lets you know that you can then click and drag that a little wider. Okay, so you can go ahead and do that. And remember, at any time throughout this video, pause the video to make the changes. Then play the video, and you can always rewind and fast forward. Okay, the other thing to take note of is you might want to split screen so that you can watch this video on one side and do the work on the other side. And the way to split screen is you can just click your tab there and you can just drag it off to the side and drag it all the way to the right or the left, whichever side you want your work to be on. Okay, and then you can take your video, okay, and you can click that tab and you can move it all the way over to the left like this. Okay, and then that will split your screen. Okay, if this was your video, you'd be watching your video on the left and you'd be watching your doing your work on the right. Okay. All right, so now we have the current temperature, and I'm actually going to keep mine split screen so I can see what information I need here. So I already took the date, time, and current temperature, and I just spread that column out. And just to show you one other thing that you can do real quick is instead of clicking and dragging and spreading, you can also hover in between there again so your cursor changes, and you can double click there, and the column will automatically get as wide as it needs to be to fit your text. Okay, so that's one thing you can do. All right, now, under current temperature, we also need the units, okay, and we're going to use degrees Fahrenheit here. All right, so how do you get that underneath? It's nice to have your units underneath the title. And so what I've done is I've clicked at the end of my word temperature, and I hold my control button down, and as I'm holding the control button, I pushed the enter, and that keeps me within the cell, but just allows me to put my units underneath the title, and units always go in parentheses, and I'm just going to put an F in there for Fahrenheit and then click out of that cell, and you'll see that that wraps around there. Okay, so now you have your units underneath. Okay, next thing we're going to need is relative humidity. Okay, and again, you'll see that that word doesn't fit in the cell, but instead of stretching this column out, I want to show you something else that you can do, and I'm just going to go to full screen here for a minute so this is a little easier to get to all my tools. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually click on, I could either do that just for this cell, or I can click the D and apply this formatting change to the entire column, which is fine either way. And there's a button up here right here called text wrapping, and you'll notice there's a little arrow next to that, and if I click that little arrow, I'm going to select this middle option for wrap. All right, and you'll see what that does. Okay, you notice it wraps the text around so it all fits in the cell. Okay, so I have my now relative humidity, and after that I have rain, and then in inches. Now again, I want to hit the control button and enter to put that cursor down below, an open parenthesis, and inches, because we're looking at rain in inches. Now, often in science we use the metric system, but when we're talking about weather in the United States, it's really common to not use the metric system, so we're going to stick with inches. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to need is the barometer. Okay, now the barometer reading measures air pressure or atmospheric pressure, right? And that's the weight of the air that's pushing down on the surface of the Earth. Okay, and so we're going to take a barometer reading, and the units that we're going to be using are inches of mercury. So the chemical symbol Hg, so inches of capital H, lowercase g, that stands for the units of inches of mercury. So when a lot of air, when the air pressure is higher, it's pushing down on the surface of the Earth. Okay, it also pushes down on the barometer, and that pushes down on the mercury, and it makes the mercury rise up into the barometer, so it rises higher. So that's why you hear high pressure or rising pressure. That's when the mercury, just like kind of almost like in a thermometer, rises up higher in the barometer. Okay, and lower pressure means the air is rising and it's lifting off of the barometer, and therefore the mercury sinks down in the tube of the barometer, and that's where that comes from, that unit, inches of mercury. Okay. All right, the next thing we need is something called the barometer trend. We're going to abbreviate it to bar trend here. And there aren't any units. This is a qualitative observation that you're going to record here. And qualitative observations use descriptive words and phrases for their descriptions instead of numbers, which would be quantitative data. Okay. By the way, I skipped relative humidity. That's going to be, again, Control Enter, and I'm going to put the units there. And the units for relative humidity, okay, that's the amount of moisture that the air can hold at a certain temperature, and it's represented as a percentage. Okay, so I put the percentage symbol in there. We got the bar trend, and then again, if I just look back at my website. Sorry about that. Let's see here. We have barometer, bar trend, and we also then have cloud cover. And cloud cover also is going to be qualitative. Right? So I'm just going to type in cloud cover. Okay. And I just want to refer back to the website for a second. You'll notice that bar trend, I said we're not using a unit, but we're going to describe if the barometer is rising or falling. And when you go to the weather website to collect this data, okay, in another video I'll show you this, but you'll see it'll either say that the barometer is rising or it's falling, or it's rising quickly or falling quickly. There'll be some sort of description that you're just going to collect that data and record. And under cloud cover, you'll also be given some options. We'll have to determine whether the sky is clear, whether you have scattered clouds, okay, if it's partly cloudy, or if it's very overcast, okay? And so those are some of the descriptive words that are used to describe cloud cover by scientists. Okay, and so now you have all of your text in. I'm going to go back to the full screen here, and our table is set up almost. Okay, what you're going to notice is there's some really light gray lines. If we were to print this table out, those light gray lines would not show up. Those are just guidelines for you. So what we're going to do now is do some basic formatting to our table. Right, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to select the entire row 3. So I click on the 3, that selects the entire row. And I want to go over here to the horizontal align tool, and I'm going to select the center align instead so that I center all my text. And right next to that is another button called vertical align, and vertical again is up and down as opposed to horizontal, which is side to side. And I'm going to vertically align to the middle so that all my text winds up in the middle of my cells. And I'm also going to stretch, so I'm going to hover over 3 and 4 and stretch that out a little bit. Okay, and so now I have my table is almost set up. We're going to record, I'm going to set this up to record data for 7 days. Okay, and we're not going to do this every day, but we are going to record data every day. But that takes only about 5 minutes at the beginning of each class. We'll collect data. All right, so we're going to set that up for 7 days. So now what I want you to do is I want to click in cell A3, drag all the way across here to H3, and then we're going to drop down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows so that we can collect data for 7 days. And I would like you to come up here to this tool called borders. And here you can take your borders and we can put borders on the entire table. Okay, so now you have these lines are now printable. Okay. Now I want you to also click on the entire row 4 and drag down all the way down. And we're going to now, anywhere in between here, you can grab one of these lines. Again, your cursor will turn from a hand to a vertical arrow up and down, and just click and drag down about half a cell block roughly, and that will stretch out all of them so they're all a little bit wider. Okay, so for presentation purposes, you have a larger table. This is a little bit easier to read. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to click and drag across. So I'm clicking in cell A3 and dragging across to highlight just these cells. And we're going to come up here to our paint bucket, pick a fill color. Okay, now for presentation purposes, remember, dark fill colors with black text does not look so well. Okay, but dark text with a light color tends to work pretty well. All right, so you can change the color, or if you would like, you can take a dark fill color, and you'll see that the dark text does not show up well. But again, if I clicked in cell A3 to H3, I can change my text color here, and I can make that white. And then I can boldface it. Okay, so bold-faced font is a good idea. You'll also see that since I bold-faced my font, this current temperature does not fit in the cell anymore. And so since temperature is not a very large number to put in here, it's going to be 2 digits, I'm going to actually shrink this cell back down. So you saw I clicked and dragged this down a little bit. And if you remember, there was a command I used. Right, so I'm clicking in cell C3 now. And I'm going to come back up here to that text wrapping, and I'm going to wrap the text. Okay, and so now it does fit. All right, finally, let's color in the rest of this. So we can click and drag to highlight our data, and we can just give that a color, and maybe we'll pick a lighter color there. Okay, so now I have a data table that's set up, and it's ready for some data. And one other thing that I can show you here is you can click and drag again from A3 all the way across to H3. And underneath those borders, you can put a thicker border, and you can also change your border color. So since we have that dark fill color, if we take a white border on those, didn't work. Let's go back to the borders. I'm going to put this outer border. Let's make that a different color, a yellow, and then we can also make that a little thicker. Okay, and then here your interior borders, you can also make those yellow and a little thicker. Okay, so that was just something else I wanted to show you how to do. Now you can pick different colors. You'll notice cloud cover, it's not very wide. So this one here, I'm just going to make that a little bit wider. Okay, now when you start to collect data, if you find any of your descriptions are a little bit too long to fit in the box, you can use a combination of commands, whether you stretch your column a little wider or you highlight those cells and you use the wrap text function. So we'll talk about that when we start to collect data. Finally, the last thing you'll notice is that your table is going to need a title. So if we click in cell A1 and we give this a title, data table 1, and we'll call this weather data. Okay, and that's good enough for today. We're going to highlight that. Let's take this font size and make the font larger. Since it's a title, we'll move that up to size 18. We'll change it from Arial font to something different. I'm going to pick Chelsea Market, boldface, and again, that text will not fit inside of that cell. But what you can do, and you can't just drag this wide now because that'll impact your column that's for your date. But what you can do is you can click in that cell and drag all the way across to H1. And we're going to use one last function here called merge cells. So we're going to select the merge type using this arrow, and we're going to merge horizontally. And then finally, center, align your title. Now you have a data table that's ready for some data. Okay, check back in the next video and I'll show you how to collect your data from the LVMS weather station webpage, and that will come in video 2. And eventually we'll take your data and we'll turn that into some charts so we can analyze your data. Okay, hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching. Be sure to turn in your data table when you're done. I will take a look at them and then I will send them back to you so you can use them again when it's time to make your graphs. All right, have a good day.